Most of you all know Greg. He is the president and founder of Stand to Reason. You know, we have the formal name of our ministry, I don't know if you know, what is not really right now legally Credo House Ministries. It is Reclaiming the Mind Ministries. And so we share a very similar passion, and he has ignited a lot of that passion within us and continues to stand very strong in his hopes and his mission to help people see that there is an intellectual market that Christianity brings to the world that is credible and persuasive. He has a radio show called Stand to Reason. Most of you know him from his radio show, but there are multiple books that we have out front, pamphlets. Don't leave here without the pamphlet, the information about his ministry, and buy something and get your picture in front of Wittenberg Castle doors with Greg, and make sure you get your book signed. Hang out, he'll be here. But today is just an informal lunch where me and Tim are going to start some conversation with Greg, but we want you guys to take over. Me and Tim are just here for props to get the conversation going, but a lot of you guys are great Greg Koukl fans, and I want you to feel free. This is the time. You are members of the Credo House. Special dispensation right now for what you have become by paying your $25 per month. Okay, Greg, thank you so much for being here. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
You like your coffee, first of all.
I do. I feel a little like a librarian, though, like sitting right here, keeping an eye over all the crowd to make sure they don't talk too loudly, you know, kind of thing. But yeah, the coffee's fabulous. Thanks to the baristas.
I told you that was an Americano, Jonathan Edwards.
Yeah.
Jonathan Edwards was a guy that did a whole lot to bring, I think, intellectual credibility to Christianity, and he sought in his day to deepen the faith there. And I think he was the one who said, and I've never been able to find the exact quote, but he said, the faith accepted, the heart, or the mind, okay, forget it. Let me start all over. The heart will reject what the mind rejects, ultimately.
The heart cannot believe what the mind rejects.
Don't correct me. This is my place. It was the exact same, you sound like my wife. It was the exact same thing, but you had to change the wording a slight bit. Okay.
I'm the librarian.
Now tell me a little bit. You have you have done so much, and it's hard for us to grab a hold and start talking about everything that you have done, but I want to hit your passions during this lunch. You tell us a little bit about your testimony, and you were an atheist before, right?
Well, it's probably not fair to say I was an atheist. I was actually raised Roman Catholic, and Jerome and I were talking about this earlier. Jerome, we swapped testimonies last night over dinner, and when I was 17, having been raised in the Roman Catholic Church, just like a lot of 17-year-olds, I did an assessment for myself, a shallow assessment, and I thought, I don't really believe this stuff, and so I went my own way. Now, this was the mid-'60s, and this is when the counterculture was coming into this country. A lot of new ideas were flooding in. The Jesus movement had started, but I didn't really care about that. I was interested in kind of doing your own thing and living for today, and these were all lines and popular songs during the time. There was the anti-war movement that was real exciting in a lot of ways. So there was just a whole new world that was opening up for me. And as a 17-year-old, then 18-year-old, the last thing that I wanted getting in the way of me realizing my full potential was any religious restrictions. So there were a lot of personal reasons to simply ignore any religious claims in my life. And of course, kids nowadays feel the same way. So that's not unusual. But I embraced a lot of these ideologies, but I didn't embrace them in a very intellectually robust way. I just was socialized into them. I repeated the slogans. I thought they were cool. I thought the thinking people, the thoughtful people had rejected Christianity. In fact, I thought I was too smart to be a Christian at that time. I thought Christians were either dumb or ugly or both, and this is why they went to church. It was, you had to love them, you know. They went to the place you had to love them because it was a rule on the back of the wall, love one another kind of thing. And then that lasted for about 5 years. I'm giving you the shortened version here. I found myself now at this time out on the West Coast. I had been raised in Chicago. I was at Michigan State University because I followed my high school sweetheart out there. And then she graduated. I'd been in the Army a bit, so that slowed me down. She'd graduated, went out to the West Coast, so I followed her out there. And that's how I happened to be in California. And I lost the girl but I got the Lord, or he got me, however you want to put it. And during that time, though, my brother, Mark, who was 2 years my junior, he had become a Christian during the Jesus movement in the Midwest, but he was out on the West Coast because he was dodging the draft. That was back when they had one of those things. And so the feds are knocking at my mom's door in Chicago, and he's hiding out at a 31 Flavor Baskin-Robbins in Long Beach, scooping ice cream. In any event, that got us together, though, because we were both in Southern California. We would connect more regularly. He's only 2 years younger than I was. I was the only of 5 that went to college. He was the kind of the accomplished jock of the family. And my view was, boy, you need that, but I'm too smart for that kind of thing. In any event, over the next year, we had lots of conversations. And to put it simply, and this is the way I told Jerome, I think my brother Mark just wore me down after a while. It wasn't like he had a sophisticated apologetic. There were no apologetic arguments that struck me as particularly profound. He offered some of that, but not much. It was just the steady proclamation of the truth of the gospel. And I can remember towards the fall, and there were some incidents that kind of brightened my eyes to these things, but as I approached the fall of 1973, I don't know any other way to put it, but that I just came to realize that Christianity was true, that Jesus was who he claimed to be, and that he had a legitimate claim on my life. And at the end of September, that's when I bowed my head and prayed a prayer with my brother Mark and asked Christ to come into my life. Now, to me, that's all not very interesting, because there's a lot of people, the same kind of thing happened. There's no big, giant wow in that, as far as I'm concerned. As I look back at my life, it's what God did immediately after that is so significant, because through a series of events, I got locked into a Christian community right away. And that was in Westwood Village, just 2 blocks off of the UCLA campus. And it was a theological community. So this was a training school that a whole bunch of men, 4 or 5 men that had formerly been with Campus Crusade for Christ, and most of them had been trained at Dallas Theological Seminary, so they had a good solid theological foundation, but they had a good, more or less. There are some exceptions to that.
There's one.
Yeah, but they also had a real heart for street evangelism and the like, which was a big deal during the Jesus movement. And so I got moved into that environment, and I lived in that community for 2.5 years, and I got discipled there, and I got trained there, and then the rest of the trajectory of my Christian life was largely determined by that launch that, through the grace of God, I was able to have in those years at a place called the Jesus Christ Light and Power House, which some people remember from the Jesus movement, but it sounds kind of corny now when I say the name of it, but this is where it was happening in Westwood Village at the time. By the way I found out about the Light and Power House is that in the summer of '73, before I was a Christian, I was down in Santa Monica Beach body surfing. I was taking the bus back into the West End to my apartment, and I was hitting on a girl that was sitting in front of me who was reading her Bible, a Christian girl. And all she wanted to do was talk to me about Jesus. And I told her, I said, her name was Adrienne Thatcher. I said, I remember it to this day, though I never saw her after that day. You'll know the significance of this in a moment. But I said, Adrienne, you and my brother would get along really well. You guys are the same, cut from the same cloth. I'm not into the Jesus stuff. Although the Holy Spirit had been working on me at that time. Anyway, I walked to Adrienne Thatcher's house, and because she was close by me, and I was still trying to make it happen there. And we got to the door, and she said goodbye and closed the door, and that was the last I ever saw of her. However, in the process of that conversation, she had mentioned to me that there was a Bible study she was going to in Westwood Village at the Jesus Christ Light and Power House. I paid no attention to it at the time, but after I came to know the Lord, this came back to me. And through a series of events, I was able to, almost surreptitiously, accidentally, stumble upon this place in Westwood Village. And within 4 months, October, November, December, January. Yeah, within 4 months, I had actually moved into that community. I canceled my apartment lease, and I moved in, and I was there for 2.5 years. So it just goes to show you never know what's going to happen. See, I never saw Adrienne Thatcher after that. as far as she knows, there was some hippie trying to pick up on her that wasn't interested in the gospel, but something she said, excuse me, and being faithful made all the difference for my life. Some very small thing God used. So that, to me, is the most dramatic part of my story. That is God using small things to make a big difference.